everyone. I'm Dr. Z. I'm a clinical psychologist specializing in transgender care. Welcome to my channel. This is going to be, I'm going to say it on the outset, so if you feel like you're not ready to watch it, don't watch it. This is going to be one of those tender, loving, but punchy push video that is going to unfold some things you've been telling yourself, because a lot of times we need to hear those things. We need to hear things we're already thinking inside of our heads and hear them spoken by somebody else for us to realize the position we're in order to make change happen. So trust me, this comes from the heart with all the compassion and love for all of you. But sometimes we need to hear the things. This is going to be a video on ways that you are telling yourself lies in order to buy yourself more time, and explaining what exactly you're doing to yourself. This is obviously a video for a lot of people who are questioning their gender, know their gender identity, know they're suffering with gender dysphoria, have yo-yoed in transition, have started and stopped, have not, in other words, made commitment to themselves and struggle to make commitment to themselves, perhaps for numerous reasons. All of your reasons are valid. All of your fears are valid. Being tied to family and kids is also valid. Being in a place where there is no possibilities to deal with that, all of those reasons are very, very valid. However, there comes a point in one's life when you consciously know that you're struggling with something, and you actually do have means at your disposal. You do have some kind of avenues to better your life where it doesn't affect your safety, where it is possible, and yet you're still not making that first step, and yet you're still keeping yourself stuck. This is where it comes down to the lies a lot of you tend to tell yourselves. And the lie goes like this: I am going to buy myself more time, because what you're consciously thinking about is that my dysphoria is cured, or my dysphoria is gone away, or my gender issues are really not what I actually thought they are. And by doing so, you think you're buying yourself more time, or you think you taking out a new lease on life. When does this happen? This tends to happen for a lot of you when you started doing something about dysphoria. Oftentimes it is taking hormones. You start taking hormones and your dysphoria lessens. The minute lessens, you start telling yourself, see, I'm done, I'm cured. I can stop taking hormones. It all got fixed. See, dysphoria never existed, because you've forgotten what that felt like, or maybe you don't want to remember what that felt like. So this is one of the instances. Another instance is, as you start doing other things in your life, dysphoria starts to lessen. In other words, think about any other times when dysphoria starts to lessen. A lot of times, primarily, it will be due to hormones, and other times, primarily, dysphoria will lessen because it tends to fluctuate drastically depending on the coping mechanism. Example being, if, for example, you used to cope with dysphoria in the past by throwing yourself into preoccupation with your mind, then suddenly, let's say you lost your job, and as a result, now the dysphoria came forefront and you're suffering, you're struggling. So you started to do something about dysphoria, and then suddenly you got your job, or you got a new job, and now you're preoccupying your mind again. So now as a coping, it works. So dysphoria now goes to the background, and as a result, you're now telling yourself lies. See, it's all fine. It was just a flux. It was just temporarily. It was momentarily. I'm fine. Everything is fine. It's not going to come back. It's this constant lie and bargaining that all of you do with yourself the minute the dysphoria lessens, either through hormones or through fluctuations, where you think that that's it. It's not coming back. It's not, it's done. It's past me. I don't know if this was crossing ourselves, but you get the point. It passed me. It's out of my life. It's never going to come back. It was just bad omen, but whatever you're telling yourself. The truth is, genuine gender dysphoria, and I say genuine because I learned to understand that dysphoria is very complex, and I learned to understand that a lot of times it can actually stem from other issues other than a root gender dysphoria. But for a lot of you as adults, and I know that a lot of you are older. A lot of you are not young adults. I know that a lot of you are in your 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s. I know that a lot of you had been struggling with it since childhood, or you just came aware of it recently, or you came aware of it during your teenage years. Regardless, I know that a lot of you have been carrying this load for a long time. So this is where the bargaining happens, mostly for people who've been carrying it with them the most. So it becomes very tempting to start telling yourself, "Oof, it came, it went, I'm cured, I'm fine, it's not happening to me." And by doing so, you think you're buying yourself some time. You think you're actually out of the woods, if you will. But that genuine dysphoria that's been there for years and years and years doesn't just suddenly vanish. I have yet to see, honestly, an adult that has had gender dysphoria for, I would say, at least 5 years, an adult, 5 years and up, that the struggles with it that long, that suddenly it's just on its own vanished. What happens to dysphoria and what you perceive as dysphoria vanishing or lessening is basically one, either you're on hormones, and it's actually hormones working. And the reason why dysphoria vanishes or diminishes when you're on hormones, because you have the right hormone in your body. Hormones are not, so hormones, let me rephrase it. Hormones are first and foremost to alleviate psychological distress of dysphoria, first and foremost. Secondary job of the hormones in this instance is to bring about secondary sex characteristic changes that then you need to align yourself with your gender. But first and foremost, let's not forget, it's to alleviate psychological distress of dysphoria. So this is why, because you finally have the right hormone in your body. So of course you're going to feel right. When I eat well, when I eat what my body knows how to process, I feel good. When I eat like shit, guess what? I feel like shit. The same things here. You take away your hormones and guess what happens? A lot of you know this, you've done this before, dysphoria came back, and man, it comes back with vengeance. It's come back so much stronger, so much more painful. So it's lessons. You feel like it's vanishing because hormones are working. And if you're not on hormones, it feels like dysphoria vanishing or lessons because there's coping employed. But let's not fool ourselves. This is not healthy coping. This is all sorts of unhealthy coping. Drinking, avoiding thinking about dysphoria, overworking yourself to death, doing drugs, other form of unhealthy coping. So it feels like dysphoria vanished. It's not there, but it's there. It's there all along. All you did is put a cap on it. So it's out of sight, out of mind. But because you put a cap on it and it's out of sight and out of mind, unfortunately, doesn't mean that it's out of your life. Again, genuine dysphoria, in my experience, I have yet to see it vanish. I really wish I didn't have to say this. Trust me, I really wish that it was a case where dysphoria just suddenly disappeared. I think that would be wonderful. And I think for perhaps for some of the young kids who may be exploring and questioning, and it has to do more with exploration and learning to find themselves and figure out who they are. For some of them, yeah, they grow out of it. But that's different. A lot of you are adults. You have gone through puberty. You have gone through adulting. You're now living your life, and you've been carrying this for so long. So these are the lies you tell yourself. And here's the thing. Here's the punchy truth a lot of us don't want to hear. A lot of you don't want to hear. Not only is it not going away, but you're really not buying yourself any time. You're not. You're not buying yourself time. And what you're doing is that you are prolonging your suffering. Just because it doesn't feel like suffering because it's masqueraded as coping or because it's masqueraded behind the hormones, it doesn't mean that it's not suffering. It's still suffering because the minute we take the coping and hormones away, the pain, the dysphoria comes to the front, and it becomes very suffocating. It becomes very difficult to deal with it. This is why I always say acknowledging that the dysphoria is present is first and foremost important step. And then taking little steps to deal with it is the second most important step. It doesn't mean that people have to jump at the full-blown tradition and line up surgeries. Absolutely not. For some of you, can't even do it. For some of you, it's not even reasonable or realistic given the finances, given the circumstances. But it does mean small, tiny steps. It means taking those little steps into how can you now, if you can't go if you do want, first and foremost, gender affirming surgeries, if you can't have it, how can you externalize yourself? How can you bring yourself? Can you start integrating yourself from within and without? Can you go on hormones? If you start hormones, can you trust the hormones? Can you trust the process? This is all really, really important, because then what you're doing is you investing in yourself instead of telling yourself lies that you're buying yourself time, which you're not. You stalling your living. This is how I see it. You stalling your living, and you are extending your autopilot existence. But when you do take little steps, even tinier steps, even being in support group, even stopping the unhealthy coping and trying to substitute them with more healthier coping to deal with the pain of dysphoria. Maybe instead of having that bottle of wine in the evening, you can go for a run or for a walk or do some kind of exercise. That's already a good substitution. Or journal about your feelings, or explore how you feel on the inside. So it's taking those little steps, and what you're doing is you're really extending, you investing in yourself, investing in your life, and before you know it, things build up, things compound. Remember the compounding interest. Things start to compound, and before you know it, you're like, oh, wait a second, how did all of this happen? How did all of this accumulate? So I really wanted to make this video because a lot of people have been talking to me about it, and they come to me, and I can see they come up with all this coping and all the things of just, and the things they're buying themselves time, but it's really just suffering, and I don't want any of you to suffer. Again, it doesn't have to be large, ginormous steps or leaps. It can be really small, acknowledging, supportive, affirming things you take in direction toward yourself. Comment below, let me know where you're at with this. Are you still telling yourself lies? What kind of lies? Are you still bargaining with yourself? How can you get yourself out of the cycle? The cycle can feel like you're hamster in a wheel and it's not going anywhere, and yet time has passed by, years have passed by, and yet here you are and nothing has changed. And that's a very painful reality to acknowledge too. So comment below, let me know. I love reading all of your comments, and I wish you all well, and I'll see you next time. Bye.